Yeah, so using font family, color, and size, for example, and then here background color. So just kind of doing those styling things to your page. It's gonna make it look a bit nicer than just the basics. So from the top, like it was pretty. These ones are pretty straightforward. I'm hoping you got to kind of check off the first bunch here last week. The proper page structure is really just, if you're using um, an editor, a good editor, it'll almost build that for you. Just want to make sure there's only one head and one stacked on top of the body, and that's what I'm looking for. The title being inside of the head and not as a separate block. So just following the general outline of a web page, HTML style. Headings are easy, paragraphs are easy. HTML links, what I was thinking here is like to an external site. I'll just add that to an external site. So that's kind of like if you're doing your content can be about anything. So if you're doing it about cars and you like Mazdas or whatever, then you could have a link to Mazda's website, right? And that could be an external link. It would be good if you opened it in a new tab so that you don't move away from your own page when you do that. And images, if for images, we did talk about it last week, just a reminder that if you have an image, it has to be stored, that file has to be stored with your HTML document itself, like in the same folder. And I guess that reminds me that if you're going to upload your HTML page, you're going to, and if you're relying on a file, a separate file for your image, then you should also upload that file. So if it's a picture of your cat, then, or your computer or whatever, right? Then you should upload that JPEG or a PNG with your HTML file when you submit your page, right? That way it'll load when I go to view your page. Images can, though, also come from external websites, and that's okay. So if you're linking to just using a URL, like saying load this image, that's fine. Just keep in mind, like, obviously, if it was your permanent website that you're making and you're linking to some other external picture, if that URL changes, like the web server on the other side hosting that changes the location of that file, then your page is broken too. So, if you do take a picture of your computer's ports or something, you have that from the last assignment and you want to link it in, then you could do that, and you would just have to link to that image that you created. Okay. If it's not working, let me know. I can troubleshoot it with you. For line breaks, that's just going to new line. Quite easy. It's just a single tag on its own. Same with horizontal rule or a line on the page. So that would be something like you can see on this assignment, Google Classroom's sort of separated the heading by using this blue line here. And yeah, it looks nice. It kind of makes it a bit easier on the eye to separate the different pieces and see the due dates of October 2nd. And yeah, so that's how a horizontal line should look. And it's just a single tag. Okay, so it's pretty easy. Comments, yeah, somebody in the other class asked how many comments. I would say just if you put your name at the top, name and date at the top as a comment, like maybe on the first line, and then maybe have one or two other places where you're sort of maybe making an explanation about what's happening, like maybe some of the more complicated things, like here I'm making a change to the font, or here's a numbered list, for example. Yeah. So because one of the next things is have a list, unordered, ordered. You could just put a title above it, describing what it is. Okay, so, or like further down when I'm talking about fonts and font families, like you could write a note to me and say like, I wanted to test this font, and I'm, you know, downloading this font or whatever. You could just have some extra explanations for things as comments. Okay, so the thing for today that I want to talk about that's I didn't speak about last week is the points further down here where we're talking about changing the way it looks a little bit. Okay, so it does link you to this link here takes you to this website or this web page within W3 Schools talking about styles. So that's what I want to focus in on today. So ask questions as I'm going along here. Um, so in this first example, it's just kind of saying, you know, this is the way you change. Like you might have been wondering, like, why it's all black? How do I change the font color? And I don't really like that font. Can I change it? Just like in a Word document or a Google Doc, how you can change fonts, right? It's nice to be able to have that ability. So how do you do it? When you look at their example, uh, they're using the style attribute. Okay, so remember last time we talked about attributes like, I guess let me just type here. So we had an A tag, and then we had, that's just the tag, right? A is the tag, and then to end the A tag, you would have that slash A. And then you would have, you know, link, right? Some text in it. But to specify where to go when you press this text, you have an href or a hyperlink reference, and that equals, um, you know, HTTP, you know, IBM.com, whatever the site might be. I don't know if it's www, maybe. So this thing here is the attribute, and this is the value, right, that we're giving it. So similarly here, we're gonna have a style and some, you know, style tag, and we're changing certain style about the paragraph, right? So you notice that this paragraph is just a normal paragraph, just says P and slash P. For any tag, you can add style to it, and you have to know what are the valid things that I can change about like a paragraph or the body tag can even have like a background color, and you can add that, you know, as an attribute of body, and you can just put it right in the opening tag, just like an ahref kind of idea. So yeah, how do you know what the things you can change are? Well, for now, we're just going to stick with the basic things like color, size, and font type. But of course, you can look up a lot of other things. And yes, good question, Annie. Can you change both? Yes. So that's a really good question because nobody asked that last time. So if you want to change them both at the same time, you can just you know, put this onto the back of the other. So see how it ends in a semicolon? You can just put another one on there. Let's see, yeah. So now it's big and blue. So you can have many things in one big quotation mark. Great question, yeah. Just going back to the tutorial, further down, it just kind of says generally this is the way it works. The style tag is, or the style attribute is not a tag. The style attribute can be thrown onto pretty much any tag that you have, but you would have to know what's possible, like to change about the thing. So there are some limitations, but it has this syntax where you'd have the tag name like P or H1, and then you could change the style equal to some, and in quotation marks, some property, and then a full colon and a value, and a semicolon. Now that seems like a lot to remember, and it's kind of strange. Don't feel bad if you have to look it up. Yeah, look it up, because you have this reference, right? And really, until you do it like probably 20 times, you're probably maybe more. You won't really maybe have that memorized, the structure of it. It's a bit strange. So look it up when you need to. Now, okay, so if you want to change, here's some of the things that are properties that you could change. You could change the background color, and you can change it of a paragraph actually. Like, see how this paragraph is yellow behind it? You could change that. This behind even just a word, that behind this word it's gray. So you can affect different parts. But if you want to affect the whole body, you change the style, and the attribute is background color, and it's powder blue. Okay, so yeah, so when you look at this now, the whole background of the whole page is powder blue, right? So one question that might come up at this point is like, okay, powder blue, like how would you ever know that this is a valid value to set that property to? And so obviously red, blue, green, yellow, like all the black, white, those standard colors exist as just words, and they link to, certain values. So all colors, this is kind of like a whole lesson on its own, so I'll try not to get bogged down in this explanation, but all colors are really, well, like I've said many times, everything in a computer is just a bunch of ones and zeros, right? So, and they're grouped into groups of 8, which is called a byte. So 8 ones and zeros, or 8 bits, makes a byte. And if you want to store a color, colors, this is like through light, you mix red, green, and blue to produce any color. So those are the key components of color when we're talking about light. So that's why it's called an RGB color. You might have heard of RGB. So RGB values are how much red, how much green, how much blue. I think the best way to demonstrate this is if I look at this mess here. Let me just erase this squiggle here. So if you, oh, that's terrible. Okay. If you look at this, these are supposed to be ones, by the way. These crazy looking sticks. I'm not very good with my dexterity with the mouse, but so if I have 8 ones, that's the highest number I can have in bits, right? Because 0, 1, those are the only 2 digits. And if you work that out, like if I figure that out, again, this is another lesson, like how to do that on a, yes. Did you have a question, Aisha?
We're just wondering, are you like drawing anything? Because we're still seeing the HTML page.
Oh no. Didn't flip it. Okay, I think that happened before when I was recording. Here, let me flip. Thanks for pointing that out. Let me flip back here. Okay, so give me a sec here. Do you see a programmer calculator? Or what do you guys see?
We see the calculator.
Yeah, okay, you do. Okay, thanks. All right. Okay, so I kind of had this up now, but I guess this kind of explains, this is just the Windows calculator, but if I'm going to binary here, ooh, changes green, wow. It gets rid of all the other digits, because in binary you only have ones and zeros. So, okay, so if I do, the highest number is to have There's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1 byte. It's 8 ones, right? That's the highest number I can go. If I look here in decimal, it equates to the number 255. So really that's the highest number that you can get with 8 bits, right? The conversion is, like I say, a whole other lesson, but I'll try and stick to the point today. I think we mentioned 2 hexadecimal before when we talked about networking. Interesting that this same value is FF, which is the highest digit. F is the highest digit in hexadecimal because it goes 0 through 9, and then A, B, C, D, E, F is the highest. So this is like kind of like 99, the highest number, 2-digit number in hex. It's the same as 255, and it's forget octal, and it's the same as just having all ones, right? So keeping that in mind, that's the highest value, 255. And then I wanted to go in and just show, okay, so if we're mixing colors, yeah, I had paint. Sorry, is it showing paint now? Just hoping it is.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. So if in paint you have this color mixer thing, if I mix 255 with 99 and 71, it's going to make this tomato kind of color that I have here, right? If I try and type 999 in here, it won't let me. It goes to 255 because that's the highest number I can get with 1 byte. Because this is actually in our number system in decimal. So, but converting to bits, it's going to be 111111111, right? So it's got a bit of green and a little less of blue, and it comes together to make that color, right? So you can definitely in HTML specify these numbers, these 3 numbers, and you can specify them in decimal, like 255, 99, 71, or you could actually do them in hex, like you can do FF, right? And 99, you could say, well, what is 99? And it's going to be 63 in hex. So hex is nice because it's a bit shorter. But so colors can be specified in that way. Sorry, my phone is going off for some reason. Yeah, so if I look at back to the tutorial here, hopefully that's showing up. This powder blue thing, how on earth do they come up with these names and the values, right? And what are they? So I did make a link for you guys just so that you have some reference if you need to, or if you want to like explore different colors and you don't want to specify red, green, and blue. Like you can do that, but if you don't want to, then I did make a link here to help you. Here we go. So, oh, this is a link here. Link it. Yeah. So, okay, I already had it open, of course. There it is. So here's tomato, which is FF 6347, or in that could be 255, 91, 71, and that's what I did there. 255 and was it 91, 71? Oh, 99, 71. Yeah. So that's the color that I mixed there. But yeah, you can scroll through there and you can see pale goldenrod. So you can literally type pale goldenrod instead of, you know, these weird hexadecimal or decimal numbers. So yeah, fuchsia. Just in case you're wondering, what are the words that I can type that equate to nice colors? So these are pretty nice colors. And if you want a background for your website, probably don't do yellow because that will look awful. Light yellow, maybe, or lemon chiffon. That sounds really nice. So yeah, so I'm no artist, but I do know that like a red or a yellow background, like just red on its own, would look pretty bad. So yeah, so here's like, not only can you do the full body, you could do just, if you wanted to, the background of H1. Again, I think this looks odd. I wouldn't really actually do this unless you really had a way to style it better. But yeah, so yeah, so you can make your dark themed website with a black background and go with white font, and it would have to contrast well. Like red and black, not a very good contrast. People with low vision might complain about your site if you do that. But there are times where you want a background color for your paragraph, and it does look good. Like here, having this gray box around this block, and then for this part, having it white does stand out nicely, and it looks good. So if you have an eye for design, you might throw these parts in as you go, right? So text color, okay, same thing. Like you can change the text. I wouldn't do this very often. Like from time to time for certain things, you could do it, but if you keep changing it, like different colors everywhere, it would look very childish and bad, right? You can make an image in the background if you want. That's true, Mikhail. But if you, again, that can look messy. Like I would stay away from anything busy. If you had a really like plain faded out background, you just have to be able to read the text, right? And I'm not marking you for style on this assignment. So if you want it to look ugly, I might cringe when I look at it, but go ahead. All right. So what else do we have here? Font family. Okay. This one here I did want to talk about. So, in Word, if I have a Word document, let me just move Word over here. I'm hoping you see all the transitions to new screens, but yeah, yell at me if you're not seeing. If I say, oh, here's Word and you're not seeing Word, then let me know. Okay, so when you drop this down and you're in Word and you're like, oh, this is a neat font here, Bondschrift, and I really want to use that. Okay, that's great. Anybody else who has Word, I suppose, is going to have these fonts installed and see it the way you see it. But on the internet, if you use Bondschrift and then in your website for your font, there may be people around the world that don't have that weird font installed, and they will not see it the way you intend to see it. So you have to be careful. If we look back at the ones that they have here, they're using Verdana and Courier, and you can clearly see the difference. Like these are definitely different looking fonts. And again, don't switch your font too often. Just maybe for headings, one font, paragraphs, a different one. That makes sense. But so fonts belong to families. So the biggest, highest level distinction between fonts are fonts that are serif and sans serif. So I'll just type it. And sans meaning not serif, French. So serif and sans serif. And those two are like the first one here. You notice between the two, the heading and the paragraph. The paragraph has these little wings on the letters, and this one does not. It's just very plain, and some would argue more readable. And so they do recommend for web pages, you want them to be as readable as possible. So use a clear font, right? Something like Verdana is good. It's very, visible, right? It's very easy to read. So it doesn't have any serifs on it. So those are the two main families of fonts. And so if your computer doesn't have that weird font, it's going to load the closest thing it has. So no problem, Frank. So if you have this font that's a weird one, your browser, like Chrome, is going to look on your computer. It'll have the closest one, or the browser probably has predefined ones that are standard. Look for one that's close and use that one. The thing is, it might mess up your spacing. Like if you use a different font, they're not exactly the same in terms of like how they display. So it might mess up the look of your page a bit. So you just have to keep that in mind as you're designing your page, that don't use weird fonts because people probably aren't going to have that. If you do have some really special, cool font that you want to use, you can get around this issue too by downloading the TrueType font and on your web server, and then there's ways to link to web servers that host those fonts and can then be used in your page by referencing them. Okay, so as an outside file. So there's ways around it, but don't worry about that. I'm not looking for expert pages here. Just stick to the basics. If you change to anything that's normal, like Times New Roman, what are some Calibri, I guess, is a pretty normal one. Arial. You can look through here for some normal ones, and try to avoid Comic Sans. That's like not the best one. Kind of goofy. That's basically all I needed to say about changing the style. I suppose it's worth mentioning that this is a good way to change the style of a small single web page where you only want to style up a few elements. But if you can imagine having like a website with many pages and hundreds of p tags in there, and you want to change the font always to Courier, and maybe have a size change as well, as Annie suggested before, and maybe a color change because you're using a dark background, then you don't want to always, for every paragraph, you wouldn't want to have to type all this, right? So that's where these style sheets come in. So style sheets it's a CSS file, like .css instead of .html. It's a separate text file in which you can house all of the styles that you use. And then if you take this part out, all you need is a p tag. And in the top, if there's a head up here of your HTML, you can link to the CSS file. And whenever it sees a p tag, it's going to apply the style that you specified. So your p tags can be just plain HTML, and then everything else can be separate, like just style sheets separate, which is also nice. Say you have 100 pages in your site and people are complaining that they can't read Courier font. So you need to change it all. That would be a pain to go find and replace or like search through every p tag and change them all. But if you have a CSS, a style sheet in a separate file, you only state it once and then change it in one spot. So that's a huge thing. So this works okay for this assignment, to put a style tag inside of various things to try them out. But generally speaking, we wouldn't want to do this for a real site. We'd want to do a separate style sheet. And we will do that in the second part of this assignment for when we do an actual site. So right now we're just playing around with stuff. Yeah. Questions with that? Okay, if you come up with thoughts while you're working, let me know. I'm gonna mute my mic. I'll stop the recording, and